Sit right down and I'll show you where my dreams began.
I'm Michael Dugan, your culinary host, guiding you through the chef's journey. Join me at the chef's table, where you'll experience stories, secret sauces, signature dishes, and kitchen disasters. Welcome back to part 2, where we continue the conversation with Chef Abbey about mental health, the CIA, the Anthony Bourdain Scholarship, traveling to Singapore, and kitchen disasters.
I will tell this to everyone I cross paths with till the day I die, is that, you know, in order to make the world go round, everyone needs to eat. Like, the world cannot, live without
That's very true.
The restaurant and the food industry. And, same thing goes with healthcare, like the hero workers as well. The things that we can't live without. These types of jobs are definitely one of the most underappreciated.
I was obsessed, just like you, about food and the culture and the chefs. And, when I realized that I wanted to be a chef and I went to cooking school, I basically just dove in. I didn't care about anything else. It just became my life. And I collected 66 cookbooks in like a year and a half, and
That's
we
awesome.
we didn't have the Food Channel back then. We had cookbooks. We had the VHS, and I think the DVDs were coming along, but like for me, I'm a little older, but I kind of grew up with, I went to cooking school. I did an internship or a apprenticeship. It really was, because I worked for a country club. And I met this amazing chef, and it was Chef Michael. I can't remember his last name right now, but he was, I think, French Canadian. And it was this incredible experience I had never been through before, where I just saw all this food, fine dining food that I'd never seen. And I tasted, peanut butter pie and bouillabaisse and halibut and just all these incredible dishes that came from all over the world. I met with a Romanian baker at the country club. I became friends with him, and he gave me his secret peanut butter pie recipe. And that kind of experience was so powerful. And then the Chef Michael, took me into the walk-in after about 6 months, and he goes, "Michael, you are doing a great job." I was a prep cook, right? I was just starting out. I'm a prep cook. And I would go home probably like you did, Abby, and I would take out, when I first learned to saute, I took out a bag of frozen peas and I put them in a pan, and I would flip them in the air, and they would go all over the floor. And I did that for a week. And then all of a sudden they landed in the pan. So that's how I learned to saute, right? That was before cooking school. And then I would take a bag of oranges and I would learn how to basically fillet them, is what my wife calls, where you peel it with a knife, and you have to get the curvature of the fruit, right? You have to know where that curve goes, because you don't want to lose any of the fruit. So I took a whole bag of oranges. I went over to my parents and I peeled them, and I gave them, dishes with oranges, orange juice. I used the oranges up, right? But it was a practice thing to get the skill down. And the chef knew that I was doing this. So when I was in the walk-in, he took me in the walk-in one day and he said, "I got some good news and some bad news. The good news is I want to keep you. The bad news is that I can't pay you." So literally another 6 months was an unpaid internship where I almost went broke. And then I turned to him after a year and I said, "I have to go. I love you. I love what you've taught me," because he taught me everything. There were no boundaries anymore. When I was as an apprentice, I could work any station, right? I could work alongside people because he wasn't paying me. And what I remember is he hooked me up with a really great French restaurant. And then I did another apprenticeship because I was a prep cook, dishwasher, eventually line cook. And I learned all the intricacies of a fine dining, small French restaurant. It's amazing that you get so hooked on this stuff. But do you make a decent living wage in the beginning? No. I mean, that's the real problem, right? It's not as valued as it should be. I've had conversations with Chef Jensen about it, and it's like, that's the real issue, is people need to see the value of what people in the hospitality are doing. and especially during the pandemic, they're keeping everybody fed, right? Whether you go and you dine or whether you take takeout, they should be honored, and respected. And instead, people complain. So they complain about the service. I found myself guilty of doing it once, and I went, wait a minute, these people are working so hard and they're short-staffed. Of course the service is going to suffer. But the bottom line is we do it because of our passion, right? And we do it because we're obsessed, because it's something that we are so excited about, being creative.
It comes down to not only the people, inside the industry understanding that, but the people outside the industry having, some type of basis knowledge of everything, what we go through and what we do and, what it takes to get from the cutting board to the plate. Maybe it would help, the sense of understanding and compassion that's needed a little more when at restaurant establishments.
Can you share a little about your journey now moving forward in Clubhouse? Like what happened there? What was that experience like, or is that experience like?
Clubhouse started all because of the Anthony Bourdain scholarship that I had received through the Culinary Institute of America. Okay. It wasn't until, submitting those scholarships, sitting behind the desk at my library job on campus at 11 o'clock at night, just typing because I'm tired and bored.
Wow.
And, my mom has been bugging me for months to do these scholarships. And she's like, Abby, just sit down and do them. They're extra money. You don't know what you could win. And I was like, fine. Yeah. And so finally, at the library job, for the heck of it, I'm just going to sit and write. And it wasn't until then that I discovered my true love for writing, describing food through writing and, bringing it to life. So I wrote a lot of those scholarships, and I was fortunate enough to win a lot of them as well. After graduation, I got in touch with Dan, who's a dean of the business management at CIA. I got in touch with Chef Jensen and Chef Mimi and the James Beard Foundation. And that's when, we all kind of came together and did this room through Clubhouse to talk about the process of, writing that scholarship and what was going through my mind and why I wrote what I did. And I was super new to Clubhouse. I believe that was my very first time experiencing the app, and let alone really talking to that many people at once, because that's something I'm not super familiar with. Chef Mimi, after that, took me under her wing, as well as Chef Jensen. I worked with them over the past few months, and in the club, Food is Religion, been so fortunate enough to meet so many people, and I'm still in awe of how many people I've connected with, that are in California or in Singapore, or just, it's crazy.
All over the world.
Yeah. And it's amazing. And it's definitely allowed me to understand my love for public speaking and my love for the different side of culinary, because, culinary doesn't always have to be in the kitchen. I think, when I graduated from school, from college, I was super unaware of what to do, because right when I graduated, that was when COVID was going on. I graduated by sitting in my living room, watching my speech play on my TV.
Yeah, my wife, same. She got her master's degree online.
Definitely the unexpected type of graduation. And after that, I was, I didn't know what to do, because that was, the time that I discovered, I really want to write. I want to get into food editing and food photography and write and bring stories to life. But I had no idea how to. I was super lost. And I was an assistant manager at this dessert place in Pittsburgh. At the time, I was living with my then significant other, was working at this milkshake place, and it was a very, very cool place in Pittsburgh. I offered to take photography photos, and my photos got them published in a magazine for their first time. And that's when I was like, okay, Abby, you can really do this.
Let's pause and give a shout out to this place. What's the name of it?
The Milkshake Factory. So yes, it's in Pittsburgh, many locations, and it was a super, super fun place to work at. They actually started as a chocolate factory that turned into a milkshake place. Yeah, I offered, just out of my free time, I wanted to really take photos for them. And I got a lot of great ones. And that's, when I truly realized where, I was most happiest. And at the time, though, I was still, I was struggling with a lot of mental health issues, and
Sure.
realized I just wasn't happy in that type of work. And I was like, Abby, you know what? You need to just get yourself back in the kitchen. You need to be in front of the heat for a little bit, get back into what you used to do. That's when I headed out to Utah to help Stein Eriksen for, their winter season. I was communicating with one of my, good friends and chefs that work at Stein Eriksen many months beforehand. So I knew they needed help. And, I love that place definitely for everything that it has taught me. So I headed out there. I lived with my best friend that I met an extern for a little bit. Living in Utah, that's definitely when Clubhouse sort of exploded for me. Definitely when I realized how much I loved it and how much I loved the writing and the public speaking. When I would be at work in the kitchen and I was like, there's nothing more that I want to do right now than, go write and, go talk in rooms on Clubhouse. And, the more I worked with Chef Mimi and, the more we got into deeper topics and the more connections I built with you guys, because honestly, I look at, food is religion and the people that I've met through Clubhouse, everyone it's more than just a community. It feels like a family to me. And, I remember Michelle Gill, the grief, talking about wanting us all to get together. And I'm like, absolutely. There's oh my gosh, it would be, the food venture. And definitely that would be an amazing time if we could all somehow gather up and meet. We all have opened up in some way or another. And it's like public healing in a way, you're healing with all of these other people. And, the more you tell your story, the less it hurts. And, the more it feels empowering to, talk to other people about it. And that's definitely what I love most about it.
Yeah, that's incredible. A huge shout out to Chef Mimi and Chef Jensen from Best Served Podcast.
Yes.
They are heroes of the hospitality industry.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Chef Jensen, alongside doing the Anthony Bourdain podcast through Clubhouse, he had reached out to me one day and was just like, hey, I have this really cool thing that I want you to be a part of. And it was the 86 challenge.
I was waiting for that. Oh yeah, we got to talk about that.
And he just, reached out to me and said, I know you love writing and, your writing's great. And I want you to submit a piece. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And I definitely chose, obviously, the idea of, outside life and how to deal with it while working in the kitchen. And that's sort of the topic I pushed myself towards when I sat down and decided to write. And the title of my article for that challenge was The Kitchen, A Hell Away from Hell. So everyone's probably wondering, what does that mean?
You gotta read it.
Read it beginning to finish?
Yes.
I will pull it up real quick. And then it was definitely a vulnerable point when I, sat down to write it. And I wasn't, I didn't understand how many people would be reading these articles until after the fact. But I think, after submitting it, I was just like, I'm glad I did that. So I'll start from the beginning. And it says, growing up, I struggled with self-love more than anyone could have ever imagined. I was a lion's roar that wasn't heard. I was a person based upon her mistakes and the baggage she carried behind her. Nothing else and nothing more. I dealt with an abusive father, moved more than 40 times in my life, dealt with sexual assault, and was constantly told by those closest to me, it happens to the best of us. I've dealt with a multitude of people who love you one day and act like you don't exist the next, and yet I've managed to crawl my way up every single mountain, every single crater, and I've always done it myself. In a life that felt so unfair to me, what did I do? I joined the restaurant industry, a hell away from hell. I pushed my way through the Culinary Institute of America, earning my bachelor's degree in business management and a minor in Asian cuisine. I placed 4th in my first ever food competition. I won over 20,000 in scholarship essays, and I even traveled to Singapore. I pushed my way through school because I knew my lion's roar was meant to be heard. I knew there was someone more than average looking back at me in the mirror day in and day out. And yet each day there is always something more to improve on. Mental health is not brought up enough, especially those that serve people daily and yet can barely manage to uphold their own. With minimal pay and no recognition, it's hell, but in the best way possible. As a chef, I cook not to get recognition. I cook because at the end of the day, there's nothing that makes me feel more alive. Walking into the employee locker room and knowing you kicked butt during dinner service, knowing you're the only female on the line and you wrote it out with ease. It's an exhilarating rush that makes up for the late nights, long hours, and missed opportunities because you had to work. To love this industry is to live within this industry, but it's the thrill of the job that constantly keeps me alive and prevents me from not thinking about those real-life problems. I feel most alive where I'm at most uncomfortable, meaning when a kitchen scares me or when the head chef is too intimidating, I know not to run because I'm in the right place. The only way towards success is to push through the times where giving up feels like the easiest thing to do. I've been through my fair share these past few years. I surrounded myself with people who only wanted to tear me down, and yet I thought they had my heart and their best interests. When in reality, the second I started chasing my dreams and stopped fixing theirs, I noticed my true worth. Sometimes, at the end of the day, I think the perfect work-life balance can be as simple as waking up, looking in the mirror with gratitude, and getting your butt to the kitchen or to the office to prove to yourself that, yes, you can do it. So that is my article. Very vulnerable. Super, super thankful I got it out there.
Abbey, you should be proud. That is incredible, incredibly honest and real. And I'm feeling tremendous emotion right now. And I think a lot of people that are listening painted a true picture of things that do happen. And you came out of it.
Thank you. Yeah. I think a lot of people look at, industry workers or, even healthcare workers. They sometimes they want to look at them as these, strong people who just push through the bull crap day in and day out.
Right.
But, sometimes, we do break down once we step out of those kitchens or, step out of the offices or hospitals. Like we do carry all that on us. And so I think it's definitely something to be aware about.
I remember a chef from cooking school, Chef Holly, used to bust hats. Like he would split a hat. He'd get really stressed, because he would take the whole school on. Imagine this big, heavyset guy that's like 6'6", 6'8". I mean, tall, right? And then you add a chef hat to that. It's this towering figure, gets red in the face, and you watch the sweat, right? And the hat literally splits. So he takes it off and jumps on it. And, he was really frustrated, right? That something didn't turn out right. Some banquet wasn't working or something, but we're students, right? We're all students. We're all learning. We're all on the same journey. And I just remember that the pressure and the intensity of things can be hell, but it can also be heaven because there's so many amazing things that happen. I just think back to this Romanian baker where we shared cultures, and he was so proud to share this coveted recipe with me and, teach me how to cook it, right? This peanut butter pie. I'll never forget it. It's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time, I think, and it's not for everybody. We know that, but it is for a lot of people. And there's a lot of great reward if you connect with the right people. So speaking of connection, right now, are there any chefs that you follow or that we should follow?
Connections in terms of chefs to follow. Oh my gosh. I feel like I should be naming every chef that I've connected with in Clubhouse because they are all incredible. And, my personal hero that I look up to that is unfortunately no longer with us is Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, yeah.
And, I just got a book of his for Christmas. And the other day I finally just sat down to watch his documentary that recently just came out. And I cried. I felt the emotions high and low, and it was incredible. Watching that movie, oh gosh, just made him more of an inspiration to me in a sense that, his love for writing and bringing that to life, his love for, traveling and his ability to be super vulnerable in the sense that, he's human like all of us and he struggled in all of those ways and, trying to balance the the industry life with, outside life, and, a lot of chefs, old and young, are, struggling to do that. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around, because it doesn't have to be like that, because, some of our greatest inspirations is pushing them to the edge. And, that says that something needs to change. And, he definitely taught me, friendships are created over eating like any meal together. And I totally believe that. And I will believe that for as long as I live, that, you create these friendships and these connections and relationships through eating a meal and sitting down at a dinner table together. And that is so important to me. And, I think for as long as I live, I'll be building, those relationships and friendships through food and my love of food. I hope everyone does the same as well.
We're in the section now called Let's Get Cooking. Have you traveled outside of the US or just in the US?
I have traveled to Singapore, Malaysia. I did that during my 4-month study abroad trip. I want to say last year, but it's been 2 years now because time has been flying.
Sure.
But it was an absolute incredible trip.
What was so great about it? Can you tell us a little bit about like any restaurant that you went to or a favorite place that you visited?
So I think biggest emotional experience I remember was the sensory overload of, when I arrived to Singapore, in the way their culture worked and, what they ate for breakfast and how different it was from America. And that's sort of what I based my entire capstone project off of, was the idea of how different, breakfast culture was in Singapore versus America.
Yes.
And I just want to read a really small excerpt from my article of, me traveling to Singapore, because
go for it.
This definitely explains, the feeling of arrival in Singapore. It was only the crack of dawn when my plane landed in Singapore, exhausted from the past 17 hours of flying, airplane meals that were more scary than appetizing, and noises of unhappy children ringing throughout my ears. I wanted anything that was both edible and enjoyable, despite the fact it was only 6 a.m. The airport seemed lively and joyful. Food places were open down the embellished hallways that filtered throughout the airport, and my stomach seemed to growl, echoing off the walls, so it seemed. My pickiness still creeped through my groggy eyes, and there I was, passing up countless choices, eventually making my way to a ramen place. As poignant as it is, the name has escaped my mind, but the flavor of the food will be imprinted amongst my taste buds for as long as I'll remember. I indulged in a bowl of pork tonkatsu ramen. The flavors swirled around my mouth like an electric current. The warm broth cozied up my tired body, allowing me to feel rejuvenated. Here I was, treating myself to a bowl of ramen, a meal I'd normally eat any time during lunch or dinner, minutes after I arrived in Singapore at 6 a.m. in the morning. Right in that exact moment, I knew there was something peculiar about Singapore's food culture that I had to figure out. So I wanted to read that for you guys, because to me, that explains my whole journey every single day throughout Singapore. Each day was a sensory overload.
Oh my gosh.
Finding new and little things that, they do that I found to be, so unique. And their architecture, oh my goodness, is absolutely beautiful. It's incredible. It's just, when you're walking through the city of Singapore, you're just in absolute awe. It's definitely a place I want to travel back to. That's for sure.
I have it on my list, and for a different reason, but now I really have it on my list. I saw a show with Anthony Bourdain where he visited Singapore. I think he was stuck or something, and he missed a plane or something, and he was stuck. So he's talked about how much you could do in Singapore and kind of went around. But anyway, the real reason for me is that I went to school at Washington State University, and I got a hotel restaurant degree after cooking school a few years later. And then I left the business. But it happens, Abby. I'm telling you, there are reasons, right? So don't just don't worry about it. But so I met this friend of mine named Christina, and she was from Singapore, and we became really good friends, and we became connected to food, meaning that I shared what I knew about European styles and things, and she shared Singaporean styles. And, it was this amazing blend of the Asian culture and the American culture. I've always wanted to go visit her in Singapore because that's where she lives. And so it just brought back these memories. And, she came to my house in Seattle for Thanksgiving and met my parents, and we were just really, really good friends. And we were also very competitive at Washington State University. We would both interview for every opportunity that came up, for internships. And that's also how we became friends. Thanks for the memory. Oh my gosh, you just brought out this amazing memory. And now I want to go there even more. I mean, I just feel really driven to do that.
Oh my God, from their chili crab, their black pepper crab, Hainanese chicken. Oh my gosh, it's all mouth-watering and delicious.
And it's also like a blend of other countries, right? So
it is a melting pot. You have Malaysia.
That's on my list. Okay.
Yeah,
and Malaysia, it should be on your list if you're listening.
And
cool.
it sadly was cut short because of COVID, but I definitely, want to make my way back there, just to eat and, go out to a hawker stall. It's just, it's a hard feeling to describe, but their way of life, abroad. And I think that made me realize my love for experiencing, different cultures in the 3D way, just going out there and experiencing, that way and not through a computer screen or a textbook.
Right.
It's just, it is a feeling that is unimaginable. And it's something everyone, if they have the chance to do, should go out and do, because, when you become humble towards another culture and immerse yourself in it, you just build the amount of respect and love, and it's very heartwarming, and it's definitely something I want to base my career around, just at the moment trying to figure out my way to get there.
That's okay. We all go through that. You're young. It's the beginning of your life journey. You got a lot of exciting adventures coming up. Can you describe any of your specialties? Like, what type of cuisine do you like to cook? I know you minored in Asia cuisine, so I'm very intrigued, but I would love to hear or have you describe a couple of your specialties.
Oh, okay. So the first one, it might come to a shock because everyone's probably expecting me to say something savory, but a specialty of mine is making cheesecakes, as silly as that sounds. It's something I do on the side. I've started to sell a few to some people and family and friends. I like to get really creative with them, whether it's like a turtle cheesecake with candied pecans on top, a banana split cheesecake, a strawberry tart, raspberry jam. I've definitely tried many different varieties, and over time, it's I've had so much fun experiencing manipulating the recipe and changing the ingredients and amount to perfect the texture and flavor that I want. And it actually has taken me like 2 years to finally put an official recipe like in my notes in my phone that I feel comfortable enough with, because, I haven't officially come across one until like just a few months ago. Definitely something I like to do on the side.
Any entrees?
Entrees, my favorite to make. Oh my gosh. I would have to say would be anything pasta. Whether definitely has to be fresh pasta. Egg pasta is my favorite, but then of course you have gnocchi that I actually just made some the other day. And you can do so many different varieties, and just whether if you saute it in brown butter or if you have an actual sauce on it, that's delicious. Other things, there's so many things I want to just think of right now that I could talk about. Asian cuisine wise, I absolutely love making homemade spicy orange chicken. And homemade dumplings, because that's a must. Learning about dumplings in Singapore, that was actually my weakest moment, but that's kind of what made me not want to stop practicing making them, because they are a challenge, from getting them the perfect steam and the perfect sear without it sticking. That's definitely hard to do. So let me think. Going down, what else? Like, I've cooked at home. Seared scallops. That's always a fun thing.
I love scallops. Oh.
And specifically because it's always fun to get that, like, the perfect crust on it, because it's so easy to overcook scallops. Like, literally 1 extra second and they're overcooked and chewy. And it's definitely, fun to work with. There's just so much I could think of.
I was going to have you pick one, but 5, 4 or 5. I mean, I'm the same. I can't stop.
Yeah.
All right. So now I have a big challenge for you, and I stump chefs sometimes on this. So are you ready?
Okay. I'm ready.
All right. In your experience, it could be at the CIA, Culinary Institute of America, or just in working in a restaurant. What one time do you remember where you had a major kitchen disaster?
A major kitchen disaster.
And some people skate this question. I don't think you'll skate it.
It was my first day on externship in Park City, Utah. And it was 2 days before Christmas. So the kitchen was an absolute madhouse. We had like every front of house staff there. Every back of house staff was there. And here's me, the new extern, and also, one of the only girls in a kitchen uniform, nervous as all hell. And I go to the dish pit and I turn around to, go somewhere else at the time. And I bump into a server that has an entire tray of food and glass cups. And it knocks all over on the floor and it shatters everywhere. And like the kitchen that was a madhouse goes absolutely silent. Like every eye is on me.
Oh my God.
I have like absolutely no idea what to do. At this point, like I just accepted my fate. I was like, they're going to send me back to school. Like they don't want me here. And I will never forget, I went to go grab the mop bucket, and after I had picked up all the little pieces, I went to go grab the mop bucket to, pick up the spill. And my chef at the time, Chef John, absolutely love him. I learned so much from him. But my first day, he looks at me and he yells and he goes, "Abbey," he's like, what the hell are you doing? And he runs over to the dirty towel bin, grabs like a handful of dirty towels and just like throws them on the floor. And he's like, think smarter, not like, don't work hard, or, the old saying.
Yeah.
And he's like, why are you grabbing the mop bucket? And he yelled at me, and like the kitchen's still silent. And like, I didn't say anything back. I think the only thing I said was, "Yes, chef." And that was definitely one of my first, real fine dining kitchen experience disasters. And I definitely felt every emotion possible in that moment, and it's definitely a moment I will not forget.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good kitchen disaster. I'm rating them in the show. That one's pretty high up there.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
I've had a few. I was bussing tables when I was just kind of getting into the industry, and I had never really bussed tables before. So I had this big tray with these water glasses filled with ice, and it was heavy. And I walked up to this table and I was trying to put the water glasses down, and the whole tray fell right into the customers.
My gosh.
And water just went everywhere, all over them. And I kept my job, bussing tables, very glorious and glamorous, but it's part of how you pay your dues, and I'll never forget that. But I've had some kitchen disasters, but that's just something that I remember from, actually from listening to you and your story. But
if I go back to a kitchen disaster, it was at school, actually. With my class at the time. And this is with two of my very close friends in class. And we were in America's Cuisines with a really well-known chef at the time. She was rated to be like, one of the top teachers for the class and one of the more difficult ones. We were cleaning, or not me specifically, but my friend Diego and Tristan and Mark were cleaning the fryer. And I think if anyone has experienced this, they know how terrible the cleanup process is. They dumped the fryer oil all over. And then, during their process of mopping it up, like we're all watching and the chef's just staring at them, waiting for them to be done, so we can end the class. And they're about to go push the mop bucket back to dump it, and the mop bucket dumps all over the floor. And so we watch them, mop up again, and, watching them, take it to the mop sink, thinking this is it. They dump the mop bucket for the third time. And oh gosh, I will never forget my chef's, the look on her face, and like the disappointment in me knowing like I technically like I have to take the heat as a team leader. And I'm just like, oh,
Right.
Come on, guys. And, knowing them, like at the time, they were just laughing hysterically because at that time, there's like nothing else to do because, it was all genuinely accidental, just the worst 3 coincidences back to back. And that was definitely a kitchen class disaster, that's for sure. But one that we look back and laugh hysterically now.
What's interesting is people may not realize, but if you're the lead, you might be graded on how you react to that. So your grade could be depend on this disaster and how you recover, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like silently were sort of laughing under their breath to themselves that they had to like shamelessly mop it up for the second and third time.
Yeah, I remember a lot of these things. I mean, I think it's just so common in industry and even in cooking school. As we take this out, do you have any special message for us that you want to share, and how can we support you and the culinary community?
I would say that my special message that I have to share for, the new incoming young chefs that are coming into the industry, and even, the older ones, is to never feel like you aren't powerful enough to have a voice. Whether you're just starting out or you're up at the top, you will always have a voice, and you will always have a chance to, speak up, and you should always speak up and, empower yourself in the kitchen as you want to be empowered in real life. And that's something I'm currently trying to teach myself and, try to bring awareness to others, because I think, we all have to realize our strengths as individuals. The younger generation going into the industry, we all have to, realize how strong we are if we come together and continue to speak up and inquire positive changes for the industry that will do nothing but better the world as it is and how we eat. So that's my special message to everyone.
That's a great message. And I know people are excited about this episode and they want to connect with you. How do they find you?
The best way to connect with me currently is both through my Instagram account, which is Chef Abbey Miller, and that will give you the ability to email me through my email as well. And I also love to connect with people through Clubhouse. So if you'd like, you can also follow me on there, join the Club Food is Religion, because not only, will I be talking about, important mental health issues, but you'll come across so many people and so many topics that I'm sure any one of you guys who are listening right now will 100% have a place and will be welcomed in to talk about whatever, your heart desires to talk about and get out there. Clubhouse or Instagram, you can just follow me, back channel me. I'll usually answer anyone back right away. I'm pretty quick on that.
Well, Chef Abbey, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. And you truly are a voice for chefs.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thankful I connected with you through Clubhouse and now through this amazing podcast. And I'm super excited to work with you in the future.
Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on Facebook. Find our website in the show notes. Subscribe on Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen. Leave a comment with 5 stars and stay tuned for the next episode of Voice for Chefs.